Welcome back to another episode of Living LFTD with Brenton Ross. Thank you guys for all the incredible feedback we've been getting over the last couple weeks. Those messages we received that something that was said, even if it was small, made a difference in someone's life. I enjoy these conversations, but that makes it that much more gratifying. So thank you for letting us know. I have another special guest today, Layton McWilliams. I was introduced to Layton through Mitch. So if you guys go back, Mitch was the second guest on the playlist of the podcast. He's actually the owner of this building. And Mitch introduced me to Layton because I'm the type of person that I just want to understand things. And so I was thinking about buying, selling some gold. And Mitch is like, I got the guy. He's an awesome stand-up guy. Trust him. And that's a big thing, obviously, in that industry is trust, because unfortunately it can be rare. And so he gave me Layton's phone number. I called him. I think the first time we talked for almost an hour on the phone. And every question I had, you just had so much knowledge, but you also were so genuine. I didn't feel like at any point you were trying to sell me in any way. And I appreciated that so much. So after I got the phone with you, I walked up and I told him, I was like, hey, that guy you introduced me to, he's a real deal. I just talked to him for like an hour. I think I'm going to go see him. So then when I followed up, went and saw him at his location, same thing. I think we talked for almost 2 hours that time, and we got even a little bit deeper. And it was just such a privilege and an honor to get to know you better, hear some of your story, learn from you. And I hope some of us get to do that more so here today as well. So Layton is with First National Bullion. And I guess I'll kind of just start there. You know, what do you guys do, and what is your company, and what's its mission?
First of all, thanks for having me on. Excited to sit down with you.
Hold on, I forgot to plug. I got to plug.
Okay.
I give these to all my guests. Those are our super greens. Man, that's only 3 times. I messed it up already. I got the first 2 in a row good, but this one I almost forgot. So those are our super greens. They're just veggies and superfoods and fruits. You can just mix them up with water. If I could only sell one product, that would be it right there. It has helped me so much with my gut health, with my immune system. If anybody struggles, even I know it's awkward to talk about, but it is what it is. Everybody goes to the bathroom. If you struggle with bathroom regularity, that's a game changer for that as well. So they're just something I want to give to every single person that comes in now. It's something I annoy all my friends and family with, because it just has helped me so much and keeps me from. I was the kid that was always sick all the time, and now I rarely, thank God, I don't get sick like ever. And so it just means so much to me. So I'm constantly telling all my friends and anybody I care about, hey, take these. And I feel bad because I feel like I'm trying to like sell something to them. And so most of the time I just end up giving them to everybody, but whatever.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Now we go. Sorry about that.
I was excited to come sit down with you. Mm-hmm. And one of my favorite parts about the career I'm in is connecting with like-minded people. Okay. And the first conversation we had on the phone, when you came and sat down in my office, we were just on the same page about a lot of things. I
remember in the first probably 3 to 5 minutes, we kind of were playing that game where we're like filling each other out to see if we had the same views. And then once we realized we were aligned there, then it was like, all right, we're off to the races. And then it was over after that.
No, it's great meeting you. And Mitch is an amazing person. Yes, I've worked with him for years, and great, generous guy, very smart business-wise. So I've learned a good amount from him just from our conversations. But it's interesting to live in a time period where you have to almost walk on eggshells when you're first meeting someone.
Yes.
You know, as Americans and citizens in general, we've lost the ability to control our emotions. You know, when we're talking to someone that might not have the same views as us. So
they get so offended so easily. I remember during COVID, I was at a Walgreens and I was standing in line, and there was this little 80-year-old woman behind me, and she dropped something on the ground. Now, being raised in the Midwest, just the way I was raised, just like, I'm picking that up. I'm going out of my way, even if I got to go back to help that woman, I'm going to pick it up. It's just the right thing to do. It's polite. And I reached down to get it, and I just realized, like, she might get mad that I'm going to touch her stuff.
That's true.
And I had to stop, and I looked up at her, and I go, is it okay if I help you? And it kind of like took her off guard, and she was like, oh yeah, of course. And then the lady that was working the register was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize until you did that she might get upset at you for even helping her. But that's where we've been now for the last 5 years.
It's hard to keep up with the cultural conditioning. You know, the social engineering, it's hard to know, okay, what's the line to toe today? Mm-hmm. But that was one thing that was really inspiring to me too. Another, younger gentleman, especially in the gold and silver industry, it's a lot of older people, even investors are usually boomer age or over. So anytime I can sit down with someone, have a conversation about gold and silver, but life in general. And one of the things about our conversation that stuck out is we agreed that the time is now for thought leaders to emerge and become beacons of truth in our society.
Absolutely.
You know, we're thankful with the technological advances to where we can have a YouTube channel. You can reach the rest of the world pretty easily compared to a couple decades ago. So the time is now for us, and it's good to learn from each other.
And I completely agree with you. And I think even to the extent that some of us need to, I'll speak for myself, be pushed out of our comfort zone to even do something like this. That's why it took me so long to do it. I think that a lot of our greatest thought leaders, as you call them, who we have the most to learn from, oftentimes are the people who also aren't the ones that just want to speak or say something just to be heard. Like they don't want to be the loud one in the room. Like they're the one that listens and has wisdom, but often are pretty quiet or soft-spoken. And so something like this gives them an opportunity where they get to really share some of that knowledge and let their voice be heard. Even if it is, for me, like it was uncomfortable for me stepping into doing something like this, but I'm so thankful I've done it, just because, like I said, the message we've gotten from people that it's helped them, but I just have so much fun and so much enjoyment with every person I have a conversation with. I get to know them that much better. I get to learn from them in these moments, and I'm excited to learn from you today. So
yeah, I'm with you, man. Yeah. I'm with you on that. It's time to be outspoken. You know, even though a lot of the introverts have been more observant and really trying to put their puzzle together as far as what's actually going on, like you say, the time is now to be a little bit more outspoken.
Yeah.
And the thing about the truth is trending right now. You know, people are craving the truth.
Amen. Yes, it is.
You know, I got into alternative information about 12 years ago, so I've been on my path to truth for a while now, but it's super encouraging to see a lot of people within the last couple of years start to take the initiative to educate themselves, look into different information and try to find their truth. So I don't think there could be a better time for this podcast. I don't think there could be a better time between a combination of people with our different backgrounds.
You nailed it. Truth is trending. People are so sick of being fed agendas and even just blatant lies. I mean, that's where we're at now. They'll even admit it. Like, we're going to say what we're going to say, and it's up to you whether or not you want to believe it or figure out if it's true. And that, I mean, and those are even from news stations with news licenses. I was watching the Rogan show when Trump was on there with him, and Trump was talking about the news licenses that are worth billions and billions of dollars that are given to these news companies and radio stations, media outlets. And I believe, and I wonder if you agree with this, I believe there needs to be like a checks and balances system put into place that if you're granted a news license like that, that you're held accountable, that you are fact checked. And if you say something that's blatantly untrue, you have an opportunity to retract and make it right. But if you don't, it's a strike against your news license. What do you think about that?
That's an interesting concept.
Be hard to enforce and control, of course.
I'm a little bit torn on it because, we would all like the people in the news or the establishment news to be more responsible with the facts they present, how you know what light they show things in. As far as I'm a little bit more of like an Austrian economics, free market capital type of mindset when it comes to society and more self-policing. So.
Interesting.
In my view, if things were working properly, regardless if they had a news license or not, if that news station was putting out propaganda or things that were resonating, people could vote with their dollars, vote with their viewership, and not give them the time of day.
You make a great point, because the only way that's even going to work is you got to trust the person that's in charge of that checks and balances system. And as we've seen for a while now, there's not much trust there. It's just that going forward, some of us feel more confident that that's going to get better. But still, you're right.
I would say that your intention is correct.
I see what you're saying.
Because the end result is we want the truth. If we can hold these news agencies responsible for the truth. But then, the only issue I see, one of the issues I see is kind of like infringing on the First Amendment and things like that. So,
I completely agree with you. I didn't think about it that way.
I don't know if we're even really going to have to worry about a quote unquote news license for much longer. Because like I say, the media landscape is shifting so quickly.
So much. Because of what they've done, it created such an opportunity for podcasts or independent news or however it's a media that's coming from an unbiased or a non-traditional news source. It's given it a voice. And that's why so many people are turning to that now, and they kind of find who they relate to, who they resonate with, what they want to listen to. And hopefully that's based in truth and not just because they found someone that thinks the same as them. But you're right, it's created an opportunity for it.
I think for the Americans that actually want to put the effort into learning what's going on and take the time, because it's not a quick thing especially if you get multiple perspectives from the same conflict or same situation. But for Americans that are ready to go ahead and educate themselves, the information is out there, and then your podcast, the content that you create is part of that.
Yeah.
I would assume that if someone was to sit down and listen to a full episode that you produced, they're gonna walk away from that with a lot more quality information and probably some insightful things that expands their perspective versus the programming that's on the television.
I agree. And I
But
appreciate you
there's
saying that.
there's a need for it, and that's why we're here to do it. And it's like I say, I'm not a big technology guy. Honestly, there's a lot of issues, and technology kind of freaks me out. But you got to take the good with the bad. And one of the good things about having a platform is you can reach a lot of people.
That's right.
And that's the exact process that I went on when I was about 20 years old. For whatever reason, I decided, you know what, I want to figure out what's going on with the world. So I started down the path of trying to absorb as much different information, read, listen, observe as many different perspectives as possible. And then, like you mentioned earlier, the word resonate. And that's a big deal to me. I do believe that truth resonates, and I think that's something that, I believe, I maintain a biblical worldview, to each their own, but I believe that God gave us intuition, and free will and discernment. And the more that we can try to get in tune with listening to our intuition, our discernment, the more we can recognize when truth is resonating or not.
That's right.
Now, I've been fooled in the past. There have been times that I've, saw a certain situation this way, got new information, then shifted my view on it.
Sure.
And, I'm mature enough to say, okay, maybe I didn't view it the right way.
As we all should be.
But if you're not open-minded and you're not putting the work in to try to at least figure out what's going on as a first step, then you fall into the category of majority of Americans, the cognitive dissonance.
Robots.
No matter how much, I don't know the exact term or the exact definition, but basically no matter how many facts you put in front of someone, if they've already, committed their mindset to this team or this tribe, no
We just watched that take place firsthand last month with the election. That was so blatant. I think more so even than ever.
In what way?
The way that, like, for example, I saw, it was like a congressional hearing post-election. They had someone, I don't remember, forgive me, who they had on the stand, but I think it was Congress that was questioning them, or they were questioning them in front of Congress. But basically, all the things that were being said about illegal abortions, that women were being turned away from care, and that women were being prosecuted, and all these different things. And what that led to, and where this person that was interviewing the person on the stand was going to, is they had used their agenda of all the ads and commercials and things that were being said to try to manipulate them to thinking like, all right, your best bet is to vote on our side and to be with us because we're actually going to protect you. And they were using that line of thinking when really, when they questioned this person on the stand, none of those things had actually ever happened. Women, and as a default, or as a result, not by default, as a result, some of those women were not going to the hospital and were having miscarriages in their homes, in their cars. Horrible stories and scenarios were taking place because they were afraid that they were going to be prosecuted or that they would be worse off, when none of it was even based in truth. And that's what I mean by that. And I don't know if you saw this, which I really liked because he led by example. Sean Ryan's show, he had a guest on, and it was actually something about Kamala having to do with, they showed her in front of like all these provisions and everything they were going to send to North Carolina. Okay. And the guest on the show that they thought they had verified all the information because they do their due diligence, they're a big show, said that it was all a sham, that stuff never even went to the people, that she just did that as a publicity stunt, and then that those provisions were never even sent. Well, it was not true. A couple days later, the stuff actually was sent. And what that person said was false. He came out and on his own, before anybody else even knew it was false, he said, I want to make a public apology. We had a guest on here and they spread some information or gave some information that was not true. We thought it was, and it's not. And because I'm so convicted to my core to tell the truth and to get the truth out there and to do it differently than what we're so sick of, I'm taking the initiative right now to apologize and say we got it wrong. And I'm sorry. It happens. Like, I loved how he led by example and did it in that way. So I guess that kind of goes back to even what I was saying about checks and balances for a news outlet. Like, I agree with you. It could be an infringement upon free speech. That would be hard to govern. It would be hard to trust that the right powers that be would handle that correctly. It could even be, and then something that's even worse off because they could control it even more so. We just need more people like that are willing to be forthright and honest and come out and do the right thing. That's what we need.
Yeah, and I think in the long run that will make his viewers even more loyal to him.
It did me.
You know, that
my respect for him went up exponentially. Before that, like, I had a feeling of who the guy was. I liked the things he had to say. I agree with most of things he's had to say for the most part. And I thought he was good at what he does, articulate. But when he did that, that's when my respect for him really grew.
Yeah, big actions over words.
Me too.
Type of situation there. And I guess to take a step back, I kind of want to know, what qualifications do you need to have a media license to begin with? Because the people that hold the licenses now are obviously leading people the wrong way.
Correct.
You know, so the whole thing is kind of a moot point to me. I think, you know, going forward with technology evolving and the mainstream media is dead at this point. Mm-hmm. You know,
I had already had this in my notes, and I love how this just already kind of transitioned to it without me even having to steer it that way. One could say it's a very weird, or even a very high anxiety producing time in our world, in our country. People don't know who or what to trust. What advice would you give those people?
Take some quiet time for yourself, first of all, even if it starts with 10 or 15 minutes, but really try to get some isolation and give yourself enough time in isolation to just calm down to begin with. Mm-hmm. But if you have one or two things that are on your mind, just really remove the external things around you and just try to really see what's, you know, resonating with inside you.
Mm-hmm. So basically you're saying take the time to think for yourself instead of to think the way they're telling you to think.
Independent thinking is a major thing, and the leaders going forward are going to be independent thinkers. But I guess the point I was trying to make is the amount of influence we have around us right now, especially with our cell phones, social media. Yeah. It's almost more about what is someone else's opinion than what do I actually feel about it. Mm-hmm. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, and it's all by design, in my opinion, you know, they want to keep us in a fearful state. The different news cycles of what is the boogeyman, you know, today. We went from Donald Trump to COVID to climate change. Right now. Yeah, drones, climate change. So they always keep an enemy in front of us to be afraid of. But then, you know, the social engineering goes as far as to, okay, this is the enemy. This is what we need to do about it. This is how you should feel about it. So if someone's feeling anxious or fearful, just take some quiet time and reevaluate what's important for your life, I suppose, like get back to the basics. Because, you know, the American lifestyle, once again, it's all based on influence. Most people out there are chasing what has been put in front of them as the life to live.
And then even taking advice politically or morally from those people that have no background in that whatsoever. We just saw that again. Think about the celebrity or artist endorsements that were brought out. It's like, who cares what that person has to think about that topic? Not demeaning them as a human value of their opinion just as a person, but that's not what they're going after. They know that they have sway because of their audience or their popularity, and that people will listen to them even though they have no knowledge or experience on the subject. But just because it's that person that has millions of followers or is a rapper or whatever, that it's going to somehow influence what they do or don't do or how they think. I mean, there was a Chappelle Show skit. I remember he was talking about, I don't remember which disaster it was. And he was like acting like he was a newscaster. And he's like, we got Ja Rule on the ground right now. Let's cut to Ja and see what Ja Rule has to say about it. What you think, Ja? Like, I mean, that's where it's like, who cares? Like, are we even doing this right now? Is this even real that we're getting this information? Like, but I mean, you see it on display like crazy. Yeah. It's gone so far that way. Look at our debates. They're not debates at all. It was so nice to actually see, I think it was the vice president, they kind of actually debated a little bit, but there was no debates whatsoever. And I always said over and over, like a broken record, I'm sure my friends got tired of hearing me saying it. Which side you fall on, doesn't matter. Whoever that candidate is, if instead of playing into the game of just trying to attack the other person the entire time, if they would have just answered the question, they would have just shown. I mean, they would have looked amazing. Just by simply answering the question, because nobody was ever even answering any questions. And it's crazy to me that that's where we've gotten. And I'm hoping, praying that, like you said, truth is trending, that we're getting to a point where that stuff's just like, it's not acceptable anymore. It's not the norm anymore. Maybe it took us getting here to the point where people are just like, how in the world did we get here? That it takes, you know, some actual self-awareness to be like, this is not where we want to be, and it's ridiculous that we got to this point, and we need to do it differently going forward.
I agree. One thing that I just thought of is, like we mentioned earlier, people trying to figure out what's going on is becoming a little bit more of a popular thing to do. So especially just the way you described it, I can just see everywhere around is the frustration building with majority, or not majority, but a good amount of citizens are trying to figure out what's going on, actually taking an active role and making sure they're trying to educate themselves. But when we have more viewers than ever tuning into the debates and they get what they get, that just builds the frustration up more.
Yep.
I would like to say another thing as far as if people are going through, anxiety. We live in, like I say, a world that has manufactured crisis around us. And if you really start to put the puzzle together, connect the dots behind the scenes, behind the veil of what makes things happen, it is very overwhelming and it can be fearful, but I stay grounded just in my faith.
Amen.
That's the first place we have to start from my perspective. And for listeners out there that might not maintain a biblical worldview, that's completely fine, but that is my truth.
Yeah.
And I think I do have to mention that as my foundation.
I love that. And I'm glad you went back to that, because as you were talking, I was brought back to a conversation that I had the privilege of having yesterday with a good buddy of mine that he doesn't share a biblical worldview. And we were talking about a lot of the things that were going on. And he's just a very mentally tough and resilient human being. And so even though he doesn't have a biblical worldview, the way he's able to find peace right now is he basically is just like, you know what, it is what it is. And I can just live with it and I'm fine. Whatever happens, happens. But that's rare. And so if you don't have the biblical worldview to fall back on and to say, despite whether it's a manufactured crisis or something really is that's going on that's affecting you, I know how this plays out. I know what the word says. I know what the Bible says. My faith is in God. He's always going to be in control. He tells us how this is going to play out, and I can find peace and faith in that. Even if it's difficult right now and I don't like the way it looks or how it feels right now, I still have assurance and hope and peace of what's to come because of what the word says. It would be so hard to not either be what we have to fall back on there, or I guess someone else has their form of that and their religion of what they believe, or to not be my buddy that's that mental resilient, or I guess you could even just say, how do I articulate that?
I mean, the Bible talks about overcoming spirit.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way that.
So, but what does the person do right now that doesn't have any of that? They're just an anxious wreck, or they drug it, or they escape in some way.
Yeah, so many escapes. With technology and everything else. Another thing that might be a little bit of a different perspective as far as someone's feelings anxious is figure out a way to accept some responsibility onto yourself. I
like that.
Because if you don't have much going on with your life, or even say you're a good, hardworking person, but you're not doing anything that really is pushing the boundaries of fulfilling you in different ways.
Or helping other people and just being self-serving. Yeah.
So in my view, if you take on, like Jordan Peterson talks about maximum responsibility.
Yeah, he does.
And that's very, very impactful to people. And yes, it can be more stressful and more anxious, but to me, if we live in a world that's filled with stress and anxiety, if you can choose or try to direct where that stress and anxiety comes from, and if it comes from a responsibility you're trying to execute on, to me, there's a lot more room for growth there versus just tuning into the media cycle and stressing out because of that.
Yeah.
So I'd say faith and find some responsibility.
So the first time we talked on the phone, one of the first questions I asked you was, during tumultuous times, election period, natural disasters, you think the world's ending, all that kind of stuff, nuclear talk, you hear so much about, all right, go buy gold, buy gold, buy gold, buy gold. And I was like, the thing is like you go buy a bunch of gold and that does happen. What are you going to do with it if, apocalyptic things take place and it's like, I'm going to shave a little gold off and trade it for bread at the store, whatever, like it's ridiculous. So what does that look like? What's the strategy there? Why do you hear that so much? What would you actually do? Like, what do you think?
I would say the reason that there's a flight to gold and silver, especially gold when times of crisis, is because we inherently know that's ultimate security. It's been around for thousands of years. It's been used as money for thousands of years. So to us, it's ingrained that is security. And I believe the same thing. But I would say a lot, in that specific scenario, if we go through a crisis, breakdown of society, I think silver probably would be a little bit more, useful to us because gold is very expensive. So if we have to go to the farmer's market, I think gold will be for saving and silver will be for spending going forward.
Interesting. That's even a little different than the conversation we had, because I remember it distinctly, and I've told a bunch of people because I agreed with what you said spot on. You were like, the gold isn't for during that actual apocalyptic time. Exactly. It's after. It's after whatever the reset looks like and the new systems put into place, you now already have something that's tangible and of value that you can now trade for whatever that currency looks like in the new system.
I'm glad that you remember that, because I think
I was listening.
no, I believe you, and I'm glad you remember that, because to me that's one of the most unique perspectives or philosophies that I share with people when it comes to gold and silver.
Yeah.
Because it's still a small industry. There's not, it's not that it is growing now as popularity is increasing, but 99% of people that you look up on YouTube or read their books or anything, they don't really offer that perspective. So the bottom line is gold and silver is money, always has been money, always will be money, in my opinion. So if we do go through a crisis period, yes, we will always be able to use our physical gold and silver to go trade, barter, buy whatever we need. But what I'm sharing with my clients is the most critical role that gold and silver is going to play for us is once we go through that crisis period and we come back together and start to rebuild as a society. Now, to preface this, I hope we don't go through that crisis scenario.
Yeah, you and me both, buddy.
So this is all hypothetical if we do get there.
Sure.
But I can speak on it with confidence because we can look at different examples throughout history. This isn't the first fiat. The US dollar is fiat right now. It's not the first fiat currency we've had throughout the world history, and it's not the first cycle that we've seen rise and then fall. So basically the idea is, and what's happened throughout history is if we do go through a crisis period, the US dollar loses enough value, we're not using it anymore. Whether that crisis period, if it happens, is a week, a month, a year, however long it is, once we come back and rebuild society and try to start the economy again, we need money. And throughout history, it always resets back to physical gold and silver. And so what it'll look like, or what it has looked like in the past, is another really big piece of information is, as far as Americans, there's probably about 3 or 4% of us that actually own the physical metal. So it's very, very small following right now. But
3 or 4%.
Right, very, very small.
Wow.
And that's the actual physical metal.
I would have been way off on that. I would have guessed higher. Wow.
It's growing, but it's still very overlooked. And I think they've intentionally distracted us away from physical gold and silver.
Makes sense.
Through a lot of mechanisms.
Because they say what that dollar a piece of paper is worth. It's only worth anything because they say it is.
Yeah.
Whereas with gold, if they can't control that, it's something that's tangible and it's limited, and their paper, they can keep printing and tell you what it's worth or what it's not worth.
To put it simply, real money is the kryptonite to the fiat system that they've overprinted and abused and weaponized the dollar around the world. But say, we go through a crisis period and we come back together as society, what we need is, what are we going to use as money? And so what has happened in the past, what I see happening if we go through it again, is we come back together, the few of us the small percentage that own physical metals, temporarily the value or the price of those metals is going to have to go up to such an extreme point that it encourages us that hold it to release it back into the labor market.
I see.
And so from an economic perspective, that's kind of the pieces of the puzzle. So
that makes sense.
Same thing happened in the Weimar Republic in Germany. You could trade a house for like 1 ounce of gold or like 75 ounces of silver. So for that short period of time, we have all these assets. Like, think about the amount of real estate just in Phoenix alone.
Sure.
And then think about the amount of physical gold and silver in Phoenix. There's a major, major imbalance right now.
Yeah.
And I don't give price predictions. Like I tell people, you don't get into gold and silver to get rich. You get into it to protect the wealth you've already earned. So it's not a pitch to, get rich or down the road you could trade this 100-ounce silver bar for a property.
Yeah.
So that's not the way that we go about educating our clients. But that being said, once we come back together and rebuild society, gold and silver have always been the best use of money. So that's, I think, where it's actually going to play the largest role for us. And so it's just a little bit of a more unique perspective than what you're going to hear from other gold and silver dealers.
I like how you look at historical things to compare. But I guess, and this might be an ignorant question, but I'm not afraid to look or be ignorant so that way I can learn and stop asking ignorant questions. How do you feel that the electronic currencies are going to affect us at this point? Because when you look at those historical counts, those things didn't exist then. And so like today, I was on your site and I saw gold was at 26, 27 an ounce, which is highest it's ever been, right?
It hit its all-time high just under 2,800 a couple months ago.
It did, okay.
But it's still very close to its all-time high.
Okay, so I know I haven't looked today. Let me look really quickly. So I had not looked yet today. I had looked yesterday at what Bitcoin is doing, and it hit its all-time high. It was about just under 110,000, and now it's down to 96,000. And I saw that gold was up like $35 today. Do you see a correlation there that as when Bitcoin, like how do you see all that fitting into the equation?
That's a big topic.
Yeah.
And it's one of the biggest things that's emerged these past probably 5-10 years.
You got a new player in the arena that didn't exist before.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's changing the game. Yeah. New technology emerges. I tell people, a lot of people expect me to bash cryptocurrency because I'm a gold and silver guy, but I don't really. It's just, I think most people need to get educated and view it the proper way. And I'd be happy to share my perspective on it. Bitcoin and other cryptos are similar to physical or to gold and silver because they're an alternative to the dollar.
Correct.
Right. So when they first introduced cryptocurrency to us, they kind of introduced it in a way as replacing money, or this could be our new money, or at least that's the vibe that I got from it.
Or even the fact that you can store a Bitcoin on a cold store on a hard drive or something is also kind of unique too. That's similar to gold. Like you have something that you could actually almost, it's still not tangible. It's still digital on the hard drive itself. It's such a weird concept because
it's a weird middle ground.
Yeah,
it really is.
Because again, you feel like there's somebody, someone, some organization out there that could all of a sudden say what you have on that hard drive, it's not worth anything anymore.
Yeah, there's a lot of differences between gold and silver and Bitcoin or other cryptos, but I think as long as people, the way that I would define cryptocurrency is an asset class. You know, and kind of what I tell people is not Bitcoin versus gold, it's Bitcoin and gold.
Yeah, I agree.
And they actually should be used for two different things.
I agree.
So your cryptocurrency, I view it as an asset class. I view it as a speculation. Mm-hmm. So similar to the other investments that you risk money to possibly get a return. Mm-hmm. So far, yes, companies, like we could probably go find a handful of places in Phoenix, we could buy things and send a Bitcoin or Ethereum. So technically it is a money right now, but the current versions of all cryptos I've seen so far, I don't think they'll ever really make the transition to be used as money on a daily basis or in a mass way. One of the single most important characteristics for money is a steady economic valuation over time. And so that's one of the biggest roadblocks with crypto right now. I mean, Bitcoin leading the way is it's crashed over 50%, I think 4 times now.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So the volatility of Bitcoin and other cryptos, that's a major issue as far as viewing it as money or being reliable, transactions every single day. That being said, I think blockchain is a very important technology that has emerged. And I do think it is the future in some ways. In my opinion, if crypto ever wants to be used as real money or actually, reliable money throughout time, and there's a few different people working on projects right now, but I would get on board with crypto as money if you could go and redeem it for physical gold or physical silver at location.
You can't do that.
To my knowledge, there's no one that has started that yet.
Really?
I may or may not be working on projects.
I was just getting ready to say, did you just come on to something right there that might be a good
I have a few things on the back burner, and I'm working, with some really smart people, and we're trying to change history. And whenever that time is right, I'll be love to come back on and kind of
Was that look almost just like hypothetically, like almost like a double exchange, because you'd have to go, crypto to the value of the dollar to what that converts to gold? Or are you thinking going directly converting straight from crypto to gold or silver?
So what it would look like is an exit away from the fiat, get out of the US dollar, exit the fiat, into physical gold and silver that is related to cryptocurrency.
Interesting.
Because the great thing about crypto is the ease of use and the convenience, and theoretically the security. But yeah, you could send crypto across the world for low fees, depending on what coins you're using and things like that. So I can't give too much information.
I understand,
away, but it's going to be exit the fiat US dollar and never go back into the fiat US dollar.
I see.
Gold and silver is to be used as your base asset as far as valuation, what gives your value of whatever token you're exchanging. But to me, the critical feature that connects all the dots or completes a circle is if I could go in, say, okay, I'm going to send you this many tokens, digital tokens, you give me this much physical gold or silver in my hand. Now, that doesn't mean the price couldn't fluctuate because the price of gold and silver goes up and down every day.
I mean, technically, you could do that right now.
You could, but you'd have to go through the US dollar as an intermediary.
Gotcha. I see what you're saying. That makes total sense.
So we still are forced to participate with that.
Yeah.
But crypto, I wrote a paper to my clients back in 2020 on crypto because I got so many emails, so many calls about it. It's like, I'm just going to do a really good paper and send it out.
Good idea. Kind of get ahead of it.
My conclusion back there, I'm going to share with you what I think is be like something new that people might have heard because, there's a million hours of recording about crypto and stuff. But my inner perspective, once I really boiled it down and thought about it, was I told my clients to view crypto similar to like the .com bubble, as in, back then you had the internet come out and it was a technological advancement. People were getting in, they're investing, they're making a bunch of money, but guess what? It ended up being in a bubble, and there was a correction in that. So I tried to use that analogy because once again, a lot of my clients are older, they remember the dot-com bubble. They probably were affected by it some ways.
Yeah.
So that's the way that I kind of try to build an analogy for a lot of people is view the emergence of crypto similar to the dot-com bubble, as in a new technology emerges. People are getting ridiculously rich off of it, but just don't overextend its strengths. Just be very, very cautious with it. Right now, I think we're still in like the honeymoon phase with crypto. Some people have lost their fortunes and then gained it back. So there's already been heartbreak. But as far as it emerging, view it similar to the dot-com bubble, as in just, yes, it's great, and just understand it's a speculation and be prepared for the instability with it. But as far as being used as actual money, the rest of the world is transitioning back to gold and silver as money. And me being in the gold and silver industry for 8 years, that's one of the biggest single exciting things for me right now is it's not really happening in the United States yet. But around the world, we have the BRICS nations coming together, and gold and silver is transitioning back to being used as money, which is they're doing that because they know the system is broken.
So first, I want to preface it before I ask you this question. You actually already answered my next question that I had here, but I want to read it anyways because what I say in here is related to how much I trust your opinion on this and how you've handled yourself. Because I was going to say people might say that you're biased, but I can say firsthand you're extremely straightforward and honest in all my interactions with you, which I really appreciate. And you already answered the question about who should buy gold and how much paper compared to gold. So before I even get to that second part of that, are you excited about what you just said because you feel like you're positioned well for that to take place? Or is there something bigger picture that makes you excited about that, of what it means on a world economic scale?
All of the above.
Yeah.
8 years ago is when I got in the gold and silver industry, and I've actually worked for 3 different precious metals companies. So I've kind of bounced around, and my journey hasn't been the easiest, but like I say, all of the above, because when I got into the industry almost a decade ago, talking to people about gold and silver was like pulling teeth. No one really was interested. No one wanted to learn about it. Back then I was like, hey guys, we're printing a lot of money. We have a lot of debt. Like this might catch up to us in the form of inflation at some point. Like this is what gold and silver can do for us. Like maybe think about learning. But
where do you think gold was at cost per ounce then?
I think it was like around 15.
So it's almost double.
1,500.
Yeah.
And I mean, it fluctuates, up and down since then. But now this last 12 months, it's up like 30% and it's close to its all-time high. But it's encouraging to me because back then I guess I'll take a quick step back. I'm not trying to go too many directions, but when I was 20 years old is when I started to put together my puzzle of my worldview, how I was going to view things going forward as an adult. And I'd always had a financial business background, kind of like an interest in that. I was, especially interested in figuring out how the money system works and what really, pulls the strings behind the scene. And I figured out that physical gold and silver have been the base of pretty much all economic activity around the world throughout history. Up until 1971, the US dollar was legitimately a representation of amount of physical gold.
Until it went away from
So it's been our whole lifetime, but we've been experimenting with fake money that really is getting us to where we are now. But when I started to figure out what was going on with the world, I kind of took some sort of inherent responsibility on myself of not only talking to people about what's going on, but what am I going to do to make an impact on the situation? I'd been good at sales. I'd, worked at Nike and a few other, larger companies and things like that. So I found gold and silver. And so for me, it's not only a way to make a good living for myself, and have success and meet cool people like you and, continue to grow my career, but also I am in the business because I believe in it. So for me, it's not so much the financial side of the potential of how much, we can gain for ourselves, but legitimately spreading the word and trying to educate, give people an opportunity to protect themselves. Yeah. So when I hear the news about the BRICS nations, to me, I do believe that transitioning back to physical gold and silver in some form as money is the solution for us. But what's happened since we got pulled off the gold standard is they have absolutely robbed us blind of our purchasing power.
My name is Jacob McLaughlin, and I'm the founder of New to Medical Device Sales. Medical device sales is the selling of medical equipment to hospitals, surgeons. They're actually in the surgeries, and the average rep's going to make around $177,000. And what we've been able to do is help people break in about 8 weeks at around $100,000 starting out in the industry. It usually is 5 to 7 interviews, 6 to 12 weeks long in the interview process, and they go up against thousands of people. But that's because You are going to be working with some of the smartest human beings, such as surgeons. You're going to make over 6 figures. You get your car paid for, all your gas paid for, and all your travel paid for. We've been able to help over 2,000 people do this in the last 2 years. Not only do we help people break in to make a difference and change other people's lives, they also get to change their lives. If you're interested in helping people and you're interested in financially becoming free, we can definitely help you. And I think you should check out New to Medical Device Sales, our podcast, while you can also click the link where you guys can learn more about what we do at New to Medical Device Sales. I absolutely love Brenton. I thank him so much for what he's doing for all of you. And I hope you guys keep enjoying the episode.
So the BRICS nations excite me, not only because I'm in the gold and silver industry and I planted my flag on this, side 8 years ago. And a lot of my intuition, a lot of the way that I see things were going to play out, has been very validating for me. So yeah, it's cool to have the personal gain, or to say, I was a little bit ahead of the curve back then when I decided what I was going to do. But mainly it's because I'm ready to think about at some point in the future having a family, and I want to make sure that their kids and their kids' will be able to enjoy American life that I did. So, and one thing, I think I've talked to you about this, but when it comes to educating our clients about, gold and silver in the world in general, is like we really try to remove the sensation out of it.
Yes, you did say this. I loved it too.
I really, like, a major takeaway is I think the new elite level of sales is based in education.
Yes.
Decades in the past, it was, high energy, manipulation tactics, fear and greed. That's how,
it was all sensationalism.
That's how sales used to be. That's not who I am naturally. So the fact that we've moved into the information age and education is the new elite level of sales. So that's how I approach it. And I've really developed more of a passion for educating, I think, than even selling at this point.
How did you self-educate? How did you get your education in all of this?
Well, like I said, when I started looking into alternative information, trying to just figure out what the heck is going on with everything in general, I mean, I give credit to everyone that I listen to their videos and their podcasts.
Once I found a passion about something, I just wanted to absorb as much information as I possibly could. And then when you put things to the test, meaning we take the information that we absorbed and then in some way try to apply it in our own life or watch how things are unfolding, you keep absorbing more and more information, you can start to see a trend of what is actually truth and what isn't. And then doing that, for almost a decade, you start to refine that more and more and more. Exactly. But that doesn't mean you stop absorbing information. You just have a better filter to run it through now. And that's how I've self-educated myself in a lot of the things that I do.
You're right on target, man.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned kind of that earlier in this conversation, is the more that you allow God to work through you and give you the discernment and the intuition, the more you can recognize truth versus non-truth. Absolutely.
I think, and the more that whether if you've had traumas or wounds or just lived long enough to have the ebbs and flows of the hard parts, the difficult seasons of life, that as you allow God to heal you and to not basically use your filter of brokenness, of carrying a chip on your shoulder to distort how you miss the blessings. You don't see the good things until you're able to heal and stop fixating on the bad and actually start seeing the good again. And I think that's even relative to a lot of the things that we're talking about. Like you've mentioned several times about whether it's an artificial crisis or a manufactured situation, that you get so conditioned to like constantly hearing the next crazy thing that's going on. And that's what you're consuming all the time. Like that's what you focus on. That's what you feel. And what I really, really liked about what you said, and what's awesome, I love when this happens. So much of the things that you're saying are already in line of things that I wanted to point out. So you're stealing my thunder, but I love it because you're doing a better job than I would. A good way that you're fighting back against anxiety is you're educating people. And you're not doing it through sensationalism. If you can give those people the information for themselves and they feel like they're not being sold something or manipulated in some way, and you're giving them actual facts and educating them in a way that they can take that breath and do what you said, take that time for some self-thought. You're fighting back against anxiety in a lot of these people in your clients' lives just by doing what you're doing, by spreading that information and doing it the way that you are.
Yeah, it's a serious business that we're in, but it's also a serious business if you have money to be lost to inflation. Like we're a volume bullion dealer, so we're not really a local coin shop. You can walk in and deal with us face to face, but we're fortunate to be more on the volume side of things. So we have clients that'll come in and spend $30 every week, and other clients will wire us millions of dollars at a time. But Especially inflation affects everyone. So even if the guy that, is investing millions with us, he has more to lose. Sometimes it means more to that person investing $30.
Sure.
That takes more discipline.
Yeah.
We treat everyone the same, give everyone the same education, but it is a serious thing, especially, the monetary policies that have got us into the place that we're at with our inflation, our money system, that's out of our control. And so when you do take possession of your own physical wealth, you transition it into physical gold and silver, the form of wealth that's been used as money for thousands of years. It is a peace of mind, and it's a piece of like independence. One of the greatest things about physical gold and silver, especially if you take it home, is like, in my opinion, that's one of the only non-violent, non-compliant things we can do with the government right now. And that really lights a fire with some people.
Unpack that a little more. Why do you think it lights a fire with a lot of people?
Because it gives them a little bit of encouragement. Like you said, we live in a world of conditioning that really want to keep us in a dark place and not think about progress or changing the situation we're in. And so when people literally break out of the monetary matrix we're in for the first time, a light bulb goes off, and I've seen it firsthand. They look for other aspects of life they can start doing that. I'm sure the same thing happens with you when you get someone turned on to maybe living a healthier life, working out, exercise, nutrition, getting that all squared away. I'm sure you see them, hey, Brenton, I just took on this new project, or hey, I think I'm going to join this hobby or do something. So no different than probably what you see when you help people on their fitness.
That's why I wanted you to unpack that more. You're exactly right. You're giving them confidence to take another. You might not even know what that other step means or looks like in their life, but you're helping them take that next step.
We live in a world of non-truth. And so if you get truth in your hand, especially physical gold and silver, man, it resonates, or waking up in the morning and feeling a lot better than you did 2 months ago before you started working out, fixing your diet.
Yeah.
So because we live in a world of a lot of false imagination around us, if we get that taste of realness, it reminds us what it's like to be a real man, a real person, a real human, and so it's really about reclaiming our independence, reclaiming our freedom.
Before we started filming, you asked me, is there any topics that I can't go into? And I said no. So I'm going to hold to that right now, and I'm going to ask you a question. And if you're uncomfortable with answering it, I completely understand.
Okay.
So it definitely feels like it's very intentional that the powers that be, whoever we're talking about, keeps us in that dark place. Do you think that that's intentional, and if so, why?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's intentional. It's social engineering.
Why do you think they do it? What does it do for them in order to do that to us?
Because we're easier to control. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think about this sometimes. If you think about North Korea, it's like, from our perspective, looking at North Korea, like, oh, they're so controlled. Like, they don't know the truth about half of the things going on in the world and things like that. It's like, maybe we need to take a step back and look at how controlled we are. How much propaganda we, ingest every single day. So and I think it's about every government around the world. It's been going on for a long time. It would be very interesting to be alive a couple 100 years ago in Arizona.
Yeah. No kidding.
Because I think that was a lot more of a real life, self-policing.
Yeah.
You got to make your way.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've transitioned bread and circuses, man.
Yeah.
We've got a society of excess, and if we can get cheap food and cheap entertainment, the quality of life is actually pretty good, even for the underachiever in America right now.
Here's the next step of that question that I feel like can get into the conspiracy side. Do you think within our country itself that big pharma plays a huge part in that to keep us in that mindset, so that way we need to rely on their products?
Yeah, without a doubt. There's and you could probably speak on this a lot more in an educated way than I can, but nutrition.
Yes.
I mean, air, food, and water, man. We're being attacked on every aspect.
Yes.
I don't even know where to start with it, but
so
I guess I'll circle back to the idea of, I maintain a biblical worldview, and I talk to clients and friends and family about this all the time, but I really believe what we're going through, what we're seeing is a battle of good versus evil.
I do too.
Not left versus right, conservative versus, progressive. Is none of that. It's good versus evil.
Yeah, so what you're not saying is it's a good person versus an evil person. You're saying good as a whole versus evil as a whole, and we're all capable of each. Do you agree with that?
I'm saying the bigger battle going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, no, I'm agreeing with that. I'm just saying, like, I don't want it to come across like from a political standpoint that if someone agrees with you, that that's seen as good, and if they don't, that means that they're evil. I'm saying that good and evil, right and wrong, if you want to go God and the devil, Okay. Which even in that itself, I think a lot of people, when they say God versus the devil, they almost look at it like they're on, like it's like this. When God's here, he's already beat the devil. That's over. And that's what gives us our assurance and our peace. The devil's already lost.
Amen.
The reason why he's attacking with so many lies and with so many evil is because the only thing he can do to us at this point, since God's already won, is try to discourage us and distract us and to go away from the truth of what's already transpired.
You said it for me, man.
Yeah.
When I say good and evil, that's exactly
okay.
That's
I just
my
wanted
truth.
to clarify that because I think a lot of people have tried to weaponize when someone says something like that I completely agree with, to saying, well, if you don't agree with me, you're the evil. And there's been so much of that. And that goes along with like that same conversation I was having yesterday with the same buddy. There's been so much, and it gets me, I'm not going to get worked up here, but there's been so much distortion by the American church or Western church or even all over the world, but more so here, of the truth. They have used it as a way to manipulate, to monetize, and to control. And then somebody goes to a church looking for truth, looking for hope, looking for courage, a way to kill their anxiety. And instead of actually finding the truth, they're sold a bill of goods. And there's only one time Jesus got mad in the entire Bible that we know of. And that's when he went into the temple and he turned over the tables. And it wasn't a reaction. It wasn't a spur of the moment. He sat down and the Bible says he fashioned a whip. He made a whip. So it took time for him to sit there and think about, as he's making it, what he's about to do. He was deeply upset and angry about what was going on in his father's house. And he went in there and he said, you guys are taking something that was meant for good. You're taking something where people were coming and looking for the truth and you're perverting it. That has happened so blatantly and so much in our world, in our country, from the spiritual side, that they go somewhere and they're saying, okay, God, I'm ready to give my life to you. I'm wanting to, actually live according to the way you've designed me to live, what you built me to do, to give my gifts and abilities back to you. Like earlier you said, doing something that's bigger than just yourself. They're ready to do that. And instead someone says, well, if you give $10 right now, you're going to get 100 back. And even if you got to give, you give right now, we're going to answer your next prayer. Or, God wants you to be healthy, wealthy, and all this. And dude, I'd rather be next to a drug dealer on Judgment Day than one of those guys, because that to me is the worst of the worst, where you're taking the truth, the actual answer, and then you're distorting it on purpose to your own agenda or to someone else's agenda that you're a part of. I said I wasn't going to go on.
No, go off, man. I'm right here with you.
Dude.
And I actually got to share a text message. I'll find it'll take me 2 seconds.
Yeah, you're fine.
It's
but
right on point with what
you're seeing
talking about.
it everywhere in all things now. And it's just, people are just are exhausted. They're tired of it. I've used the example in another talk that I gave about feeling like we're in a vehicle right now that is in a weird part of town that we don't know. And it's taking a weird route that we don't know. And we don't know who's driving. And everyone's anxious and like, where are we going? What's going on? Why are we doing it this way? It's even like right now, we mentioned like the drone thing. Like, it's so wild that right now everybody is talking about drones that are just flying over our heads at night and all over the place, and there's no answers. But it's like, well, that's just this week's topic. It's just another continuation of something that we don't know what to believe. And like, what does it take, for this to get to the point where it stops, where it changes, where we get back to the truth? And to me, it's only going to be through our faith.
It could play out a lot of ways, but for the majority of people, the best way would be a massive revival.
Absolutely.
And that's what we need. And maybe that will happen. I think I try to take a very humbled approach when I'm talking about bigger concepts like that, including revelations or revival, is because I really think that it's so far beyond us to say when it's happening and things like that. I'm going to share this text message with you because it is exactly what you're describing. And I'll share a little bit of a preface on it. Past couple of years, a lot of my clients, a lot of associates will invite me to go out to different Patriot Group meetings, Mesa, Chandler, Glendale, Deer Valley, like all these different areas. So I'll travel around and join their meeting, and they'll have a pretty good vision and they'll have passion about what they're talking about and things like that. And they'll always ask me, hey, will you join our group? Will you, help us with your efforts and things like that? And so I'd gone around to a handful of these all really smart people with good initiative and really trying to make a change. But I only have so many hours in a day, so many hours in the week. And so I really had to sit back and think, okay, if I'm talking to clients, friends and family every day, telling them the way that I'm viewing it is a battle of good versus evil, what I'm going to do instead of joining a Patriot Group to go to every Thursday night is I'm going to join a Bible study, So if I truly believe it's good versus evil, that's where I need to strengthen my abilities, And so that's why I ended up, one of my great clients, Brett Reese, He was a former pastor. Respect him so much because he was pastoring in the ghettos of Washington, D.C., Chicago, things like this back in the 70s and 80s. We had a conversation like this in my office one day about how modern Christianity has really fallen off. A lot of churches will really mislead people and not get them on the salvation path. So we started a Bible study. But I want to read this. We had a lady join the Bible, or she came for the first time a couple weeks ago to the Bible study. And it was an amazing story. I felt for her. Her husband had just passed away. He was a professing Christian throughout his entire life. She never really had gone to faith. Him passing encouraged her to try to find somewhere to go, someone to talk to about faith. Just really, really deep situation.
Interesting.
Now, Brett, amazing guy. He's old school. One reason I love him, he was putting up flyers at the grocery store. Hey, Bible study in Greyhawk neighborhood. Come check it out. She saw the flyer. She showed up and she had just really, some of them were basic, some of them were deeper, but just questions about faith and Christianity. And then, Brett had texted me the next day after that. And, he asked me kind of what I thought about it. And I'll share the text that I responded. I said, yes, we did. I thought it was a powerful study. Even if it was a smaller group, I really could sense the Lord working with all of us, especially my nephew and the new lady that joined. All I could think about her was what a divine moment to get her to our group. Of all the different places she could have walked into to seek mentorship and faith, of all the places she found our group that have nothing but goodwill and intentions. Amazing. And I had to share that based on what you were just
that's beautiful. I think the reason why when that happens that way, that's so special is even the groups themselves can then lose their way if it's not about every single time, how do we commune together to commune with Jesus? How is this coming together of us get us closer to Jesus? How can we experience him together? It's not just what commonalities do we have? Are we all going through hard things and let's just make each other feel better?
Right.
Let's let Jesus do that by talking about him, by reading about him, by praying together. Like that, what you just explained is where such incredible things can take place. And that is the battlefield. You're exactly right. I love that you brought it back to that and had the boldness to bring it back to that. Because this, even though I bring God into almost every episode because he's at the center of my life. He changed my life. My life is his. But this isn't a Christian show or whatever, but it's just, I'm sure anybody that watches is like, yeah, okay, yeah, it is. But the fact that we're having these types of conversations and you're really getting to the root of it, because it's not about anything other than truly, okay, God, I'm trusting you in all of this. Like I read something, I'm going to read something to you now that my buddy sent me. And this was absolutely incredible. And I've already read it, I think, to 3 different people since he sent this to me. And it's by an author named Brennan Manning. His story is unbelievable. He sent me, there's a YouTube video that the whole book, the audio book, is The Furious Longing of God. And you can just type that in on YouTube and the whole audio book's right there. And I just listened to half of it in here a few days ago and it was incredible. But he wrote in here, and this is just a excerpt from a different book of his called Ruthless Trust. And it says, the splendor of a human heart that trusts it is loved unconditionally gives God more pleasure than the Westminster Cathedral. So meaning when we actually choose to trust God, despite all the lies we're being fed, because that's what I said earlier, the only thing the enemy can do now, he can't win. He can just try to confuse us, pull us away, distract us. So when we actually, despite everything that's going on around us, choose to trust God, that we are loved unconditionally, it gives God more pleasure than the Westminster Cathedral, the Sistine Chapel, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, Van Gogh's Sunflowers, a sight of 10,000 butterflies in flight, or the scent of 1,000,000 orchids in bloom. Trust is our gift back to God. That's the free will. Like in my conversation with my other buddy yesterday, we were talking about all the terrible things that were happening, and it kind of comes up a lot often. And this was a big one for me when I lost my father and my brother, and things were going really poorly for me in life. I'm like, if God's real, why are all these bad things happening to me? And why they happened to my dad that loved God and all this stuff? And I had to really accept what it truly means to have free will. If you come home and you have a robot that greets you at the door and says, hey, how was your day? And kisses you, that's not love. That's you just programmed it to do that. But if you have someone that actually chooses to ask you how your day is going and to love you despite your flaws, that's true love. And so he had to give us free will in order for true love to exist. And so our choice to say, God, I love you and I accept your gift and I choose to trust you brings him more joy than anything else. And that just like, it stuck with me so much, because if I'm honest with myself over the years or in different scenarios, in my highest anxiety producing moments or periods of time, it's because I am struggling to trust. It always comes back to that trust. And I love that you even said, like, we can make educated decisions on how you diversify in gold or Bitcoin or paper or whatever you do. But at the end of the day, it's still coming back to, this is the foundation. I'm going to make educated decisions, run them through my worldview, my faith, my biblical worldview, and that's where I'm going to find my peace. It's not that I got this equation perfectly right. Having just the right equation of how much gold I own, it gives us a sense of control. And you said that, like, let's say I'm holding, $10,000 worth of gold in my hand. I feel pretty good. I'm kind of in control right now. Well, if I get a sickness or my loved one gets a sickness and I have all the money to pay for it, but they still can't cure it, that money doesn't give me the control I need in that scenario. It just gave me the illusion of it for a time period. So the only we don't have control. We have to acknowledge that. And the only way we can truly have peace is to trust. It's just really hard because we want control. We want control in so many different aspects of our life. And it's definitely a hard conversation when it crosses over with money.
I don't know. There's so many things I could say. Yeah. Like this got pretty good. I guess, on the money side of it, what I've noticed throughout the 8 years is the person on the other side of my desk, the more money they have, the more business experience they have, the more that they can tell when they're being sold something, Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, trust is a big thing, trust in God to direct your life and give you the abilities to make your own choices, which is kind of it's a big concept that a lot of people might not understand. Like, there's so many directions I could go with this.
I feel like really trusting and following God, something that really helped me and resonated with me is when I had a gentleman. I used to have those two chairs sitting here before we had this table. He was sitting across from me, and he's actually a pastor in Africa. And I'm really close with his son, and his son's actually been on this show, Josh Ward. But his father, their family takes care of 400 orphan children full-time in Africa. Wow. And he's actually a pastor of a local church. Wow. And he had just been in town for maybe a couple days. I'd never met him in person. And he sat down in that chair across from me, and he just prayed with me, and he just spoke to me. And one of the things he said is, Brent, God is not going to trick or trap you. If your heart is truly to trust and serve God, and you're looking to him in all things that you do, whether it's your money decisions or your family, your personal decisions, if you're seeking truly to trust and to say everything belongs to you and I'm just a steward and I want to make wise decisions as I trust and serve you, if you get it wrong, he's not going to look at you and say, hey, look, you messed up. It was a trap. If you would have done this, things would have been good for you. That's not how he works. He's going to give us peace. Like, that's what's promised. That's where these prosperity gospel preachers, they get in there and they're like, well, what he's saying is you're going to get money and you're going to have health and you're going to have a happy life. None of that is promised. Right. The only thing that's promised is that he's always going to be with us and that we don't have to go through difficult times alone. Yes, he can bless. Yes, he chooses to bless us. He's a good father. He loves us. But even when we don't get the things we want, it's just like, now that I'm a father, I understand it from a whole different perspective. My daughter, in the morning, come out of her bedroom, we're getting ready to have our eggs and our Dave's Killer Bread every morning that's healthy, lean, and mean. And she's like, I want cookies, And it's like, I know that that's not good for her in that moment. She can have it later this evening, at like 3:00 in the afternoon before she turns into a crazy person at night. So I'm not giving it to her then either. So I know just at around like that early afternoon time frame, that's the time she can have a cookie. But she thinks she needs it right now. That's me. I'm that little kid, and I'm saying, I need this amount of money right now. I need this in my life right now so that I can control and make this what I think it should be. But if I really trust that he's a good father and he has my best interest, even if I don't get what I think I need when I need it, I can still have peace, because that means I just didn't know and he knew better. So he's going to take care of it at the right time, in the right place, and in the right way.
So true, man. So many things I've gone through with life, and you go through a situation, you don't understand why it's happening at that point. And then years later, a couple months later, however long it is, you're like, it all makes sense how it lines up. Even my own journey, you know, going through 3 different precious metals companies, being a small industry, especially when I left that second one, I didn't think I was might not have an opportunity to get back into the industry, you know, but I really put my mind to it, and God opened up an opportunity and I ran with it. But I'm with you, man, and no one's perfect. And, you know, my nephew or anyone else that knows me well will tell you is like, I am internally impatient. You know, outwardly I'm pretty calm, cool, collected, but I do catch myself being impatient with things developing and things happening.
Too.
So that's one of my biggest struggles is
big time.
You know, and it's not that I don't trust God or, you know, believe in his plan, but
I think a lot of people that are driven the way we are that way.
I think it's a little bit of overthinking. You know, what could have we done different with our time today?
Yes.
Or maybe we could have approached this interaction differently.
To the point it can even rob your peace at times.
Oh, absolutely, man.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, I've learned to live with it, you know, not being able to turn your brain off and things. And the more of a positive mindset you maintain in life, if you are an overthinker like myself and probably like yourself, you could actually kind of morph that into a positive thing for you. It's like I decided my mind is going to be running anyways. Even if I'm, you know, contemplating stressful things, if I try to view it in a sense of what can we do positive through this, or how can we move through this and get the outcome that we want, you know, but there's a lot of internal work that I've done, even the last 4 or 5 years, you know, and I'm very proud of the progress that I've made, and, you know, trying to just become a better person within myself.
Yeah.
But self-awareness, conscientiousness, things like that. What was I was going to mention on the faith side of things is one thing that we kind of tackled at Bible study is some people have a once saved, always saved mindset, to where I'm more leaning towards the narrow gate theory, as in, and it very relevant to the mainstream churches nowadays. So I believe it's like Matthew 17, but the idea is that even majority of self-professing Christians won't be saved at the end. It'll actually be, you know, a narrow gate. The path is narrow. So I did want to kind of throw that in there. If there are listeners that are, you know, more into reading your Bible and stuff, check out, you know, read into the narrow gate. And the other thing I was going to say,
do you mind if I ask you a question on that first before we move on? Because I want to make sure they also understand if this is the person that has zero Bible knowledge or anything whatsoever. The once saved, always saved, there's a lot of people that believe what he means by that is you say the salvation prayer, and then once you've done that, no matter how you live your life after that, you're still going to go to heaven is what that means. And then what I want to ask you a question on is what you're meaning by the gate is narrow is a lot of people like Pharisees that Jesus referred to a lot in the Bible that look holier now. They're at church every Sunday. They're the one that look like everything's picture perfect. They're that goody two-shoe Christian on the outside, but really their heart's not for God. They have not submitted to God. They've just taken on an image that serves them well. They like, they fit into, that serves their life purpose. However, that fits into their, you know, their box. But their heart really isn't God's. And that's what you're referring to, is that the person that's going to go to heaven is when you give your heart to Christ, you're truly saying, I'm giving myself fully to you, and that your heart remains dedicated to him. And that's going to usually, hopefully, result in how you live your life, and that you can see that. But what you're saying is that there's a lot of people out there that you might think that have done that, but really it's just an act in a self-serving scenario, and their heart really hasn't been given to God. Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah, okay.
And
I just want to clarify that just for the person that doesn't understand, because on the other side of that, I think there's a lot of people that they're so worried that they have to keep doing everything perfectly and keep asking God to, and like recommitting their life to Christ, and they carry this burden all the time. So I want to even just touch on that. I didn't even expect we were going to go this deep in this, but I'm loving this. And if it's okay, I'd like to go a little bit deeper into it. So, because I run into this all the time, I'll talk to a buddy that hasn't given his life to God, and he's like, you know, I'm trying to get my shit together. And when I do, then I'm going to be able to, you know, really get into this faith thing. And I'm like, you got it backwards. You don't got to get your shit together so that way God will accept you. He already loves you and accepts you right now. You just need to give your heart to him now, and he will help you get your life together.
Right.
Because you're going to be giving him your heart, and because you love him, you're going to want to do things that it says in the Bible that teaches you how to live the life he's designed for you, and therefore your life is going to come together. They get that part backwards. And then there's also the guy that says, okay, I gave my life to Christ, but you know, I'm still struggling with porn, or I struggle with drinking, or whatever it may be, and I keep feeling like I'm losing my salvation. No, if you've given your heart to God and your heart to follow God, you're not losing your salvation every time you sin. But they carry this burden around that like they keep losing it over and over. Well, the whole reason why you're feeling that in the first place is you're feeling convicted because you're not following God the way you know you want to, because you do love him and you have given your heart to him. So have peace and know that, yes, you want to stop doing those things that are sins. Rely on God to do that. Let him change. But what helps you get past those things that are habits or things that you've battled for a long time isn't don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this anymore, because then you're still just thinking about it and you're most likely going to keep doing it. It's to put your heart and your mind and your focus on the things of God and to put your attention there. And then the power of those things starts to diminish and he will help you with that. So that's when Jesus says, if you yoke to me, the burden's light. Like, you don't have to carry this anymore.
He did the work for us.
He did it for us.
Right.
And so there's those two parts of it. But I just want to make sure, like, because I run into that all the time in guys that they're so bogged down and so beat down that they don't even realize that once you give your heart to Christ, and this was a game changer for me, once you give your heart to Christ, when he looks at you, he doesn't see that sin that you're carrying around. He sees Jesus. He sees his son. You are his child now. He loves you. He loves you more than you can ever imagine, more than I can even look at my 2 baby girls and the love I feel towards them. God loves me even more than that. And so right now, that's something that I've been working on for years, but we're probably working on my whole life, is to heal enough to actually believe that God loves me that much that I can form my whole worldview and perspective from that lens that I really am loved by him that much. But for a lot of us, it's hard to believe, depending on what's going on in their life, depending on how it's happened, how things have transpired in your life, the people that were supposed to love you well and haven't. So how could a God that's invisible, that I haven't seen, love me that much if the person, whether it's a parent or a spouse that left you or whatever, you lost a child, how can that person turned away from, they don't love me? It's so hard for them to accept the fact that God would really love them that much. But that's where it's like we talked about, formulating your worldview through that perspective that you can trust God, that he's going to lead you, he's going to guide you. It's not a trap. But the reason why I want to go into this part of it is because I was that skeptical person and my mind tries to go there. Just like you were saying, my mind tries to pick everything apart. It wants to find a contradiction. It wants to find a fallacy so that way I can discredit and move on or understand it for what it is. And so my mind constantly is trying to attack everything and figure it out and disassemble it and reassemble it. And so when someone would say, well, you just, your dad died or your brother died of a drug, or whatever the bad thing that's going on in your life, like, you just got to trust God that it was for a reason. And I'm like, for what? For what? I still don't know. So what do I do with that? Like, he hasn't shown me, and I'm not promised that answer. So what was a game changer for me was that I realized it's just like a parent with a child or a spouse with each other. That trust isn't built because one day you just decided, hey, let's get married. You decided to get married because you've gotten to know each other over a period of time and built trust to the point you think, this is someone I want to do my life with. The trust wasn't established when someone said, all right, God, I'm saved. It was when their heart said, I realize that there's something missing here, and I'm choosing to believe that the creator of the universe really did sacrifice his son for me, and I'm choosing to give my life to him. But what needs to take place is now the development of that trust through your time in the Word, through your time with God. And I had not been doing that. I had not been getting up in the morning or whatever time of day works for that person just to say, God, I'm just going to be present with you. I'm trying to commune with you. I want to get to know you more. I want to read your word and spend that intentional time. So that way I do get to know his nature. I do get to know who he is. So then when things happen in life that I can't explain, it's still not easy to trust, but I can actually trust, okay, God, I don't know the answer why my brother died. I don't know. And I might not ever know in this life, but I know you enough and I know you love me enough that this is going to be for your good in some way. It's still not easy, but it's the only way I can still find peace. Is I have to get to know my Father well enough to accept the fact that even if I don't understand, it's still for good. It's still for good.
That's really powerful, man. And I agree with all of that. And you got to give it up to him. We really have to keep in perspective how minimal we are to his greatness. And there's so many things that we can't comprehend. I guess what I would say about, for people that maybe aren't Christians or listening that, aren't super strong with the faith or anything, is what we need to tell Americans is we have a mission in front of us according to the Bible, because we're preparing ourselves for the eternal life. The life or the time we have on earth is a very short time compared to that. So,
and it's not the US gets in and China doesn't or whatever. It's all of us as people, like nationalism is a very interesting thing. I love our country. I do. But I love people as a whole more than I love our country.
I think Mark Twain said, he's like, support your country always and support your government when it deserves it.
So I think when country in that phrase is what he's referring to as people as a whole.
The citizens.
Yeah.
Your neighbors.
You're just loving them.
The people around you.
Yeah. I took this quote earlier when I was making my notes, and I don't even know who it was by, but it just said, there's no greater gift than thinking that you had some impact on someone for the better. You'd change their life for the better in some way. You should never be defined by status or the things you have. You've got to define yourself by who you are and who you impact and how you impact people. You're doing that with what you're doing. And I can already see and confidently say that you're making an impact in a lot of people's lives, not just your clients, the people at your Bible study, but just the people you interact with. You've made an impact on me. There's things I've remembered that you said just in our 2 conversations, now blessed to have a third. Why is that important to you? Other than just
first of all, thank you.
God. Yeah, absolutely.
That was very, very kind things to say. 2 things. I'll say the responsibility that I took upon myself when I figured out how messed up the world was. And then secondarily, if my kids or grandkids ask me, what were you doing when all this was going down? What, I got to have an answer for them. Because if I don't, then...
Yeah, you actually were the guy getting in the water. You weren't the guy just sitting on the edge watching it transpire. You want to get in and do something about it. You want to have a ripple effect. I love that answer.
It's a dual-edged sword, though, because through, my parents were born in the late 50s, so pretty much throughout their entire lifetime, they experienced prosperity, the American life, things like that. They're in their late 60s now. But I'm kind of torn because it's, if we want to feel down on the situation, be like, dang, why, millennials, we can blame the boomers for all the problems that we have. They let all this stuff go on in government, all this stuff. So you can view it that way and have more of a dismissive mindset, or you can view it as an opportunity. Would have I liked to be born in the 50s and lived a cool life and done all this stuff? Yes, but in reality, it's going to be a lot more fulfilling if I'm trying to do my part in changing things.
Right.
So it is a little bit of I take it as a responsibility. And I don't think everyone has to be a thought leader out there, but everyone should take the time to get themselves right mentally, spiritually, emotionally, whatever that looks like for you, and then start identifying the people around you that are more into like the truth, basically, and trying to make changes.
I want to ask a question because we've gone heavily in the spiritual side, and for the person that can say they don't really care about that, hopefully they care about it now after listening to us talk. But just from a practical advice standpoint, let's say, doesn't matter what the age is, person has, they're not ultra wealthy. They have, whether their own business or working 9 to 5, they're able to save a little bit of their money. They're just like in a stable state. What advice would you give that person as far as what they do with their money in terms of how they diversify from paper to gold to crypto? Like, what does that look? I know it's gonna be very specific, but I'm just saying, like, a lot of people are so enamored by the concept of the crypto side that there's like a pull to it. And then I feel like sometimes the fear mongering that drives a pull to the hard metals, and then paper's what they know, it's what they've grown up with, and it's what they pay their bills with, and that's probably what they're paying interest on their car loan or their home loan or their credit cards or whatever it is. So practical advice, do you agree with, if right now, because paper costs more right now than it has in a long time, the cost of loans and the interest rates are up in our lifetime. If you have that, does it make sense to pay down with your paper to not carry interest rates right now because you have an expense on your money? Once you've accomplished that, then look at, okay, I want to diversify into the gold and silver. And then, I see that there's a future and a lot of potential here in crypto. So it's not that I want to go super heavy here or all in here or even all in on paper. I want to strategically diversify where these are things that are like you said, somewhat of a security there. This has more of a future upside. I'm not saying that one better than the other. I don't even mean it that way. That you're kind of diversifying in that way and then still holding on for paper right now. Is that what you would say? Or what does that look like? What do you think?
Yeah, diversification is always a good idea. I don't claim to be an expert on the stock market or real estate or crypto or anything like that. I know a good amount about all of it. I do know gold and silver. That's the lane that I stick in, and I do understand the money system. So just in general, the advice I'd give people is figure out how much cash, actual hard US dollars you need for expenses and emergencies. Keep that on you or in the bank at all times.
Okay.
Because bottom line is, if emergency happens in 45 minutes, cash is king still.
Yeah.
And you never want to overextend yourself into other assets. So we are still forced to participate with the US dollar. It's how the world works, or within the United States, how the world is working right now. So never get fully out of cash. From my perspective, however much cash you need to keep in the bank or under your mattress, that'll cover bills and emergency expenses, wages for 3 months, whatever you feel comfortable with, keep that in cash. The rest of it, I would get away from the US dollar right now. Whether that be get into gold and silver, get into crypto. The way that I view things right now is gold and silver, I think even though gold's close to its all-time high, silver is not even back to where it was in 2011. I think they're one of the few asset classes that'll hold strength as we go through this economic transition. So Trump just got into office, which I think most of us are probably happy about. We think he was the logical choice. And I think he is the right person to have in office. My main confidence that he gives is going to be the international security. It seems like other countries respect our military a little bit more when he's in office. Maybe that's just a projected thing. We're facing two major things as far as our economy is concerned. That's the national debt. And that's about the amount of money we created. So our money supply is over 20 trillion right now. Our national debt's over 30 trillion. And so, to try to explain it simply, we have our national debt and our money supply, which are overinflated. We've been abusing for decades. These are the things working against American prosperity. And then we have our economic output, which is our GDP. And this is what, adds to the bucket. The way that I'm viewing it going forward these next 4 years is, yes, Trump was the right choice, and he's good at getting our economy going. So I expect him to start pumping the oil again, revigorate small business. He might put a little bit more money in our pockets. But in the big perspective, if our national debt or our money supply is up here, no matter how much of a badass he is, however much he gets the GDP going back up, I still don't think we're going to be able to overcome the amount of debt, the amount of money supply that we've had. So within the next 2, 3, 4 years, I could see us basically getting a little bit of a reprieve. I think if the other side got elected, we would have gone through our economic transition, our economic crash, however you want to put it, a little bit sooner. Trump's in office now, so I think it really depends on the decision that he wants to make. From a objective economic perspective, we won't be able to go forward with a honest money system until we divulge the amount of debt, the amount of money creation we have right now. And so the biggest question that I'm asking myself and talking to a lot of smart people that I know about is, I believe Trump understands this. So my question is he going to fall on that sword for America and take us through that economic rough transition to get back on the path with an honest money going forward? Or is he too concerned with his legacy? He'll pump it while he's in and then just leave that for the next guy.
Great question.
So that's, when it comes to the economy, what to do with our money right now, that's the main thing I'm thinking of. Either way, though, I do see the US dollar continue to slide down in value. So, in other words, get away from the US dollar. Have it for emergencies and have it for your expenses because it's forced participation. But I wouldn't want to hold much more US dollars than I need to.
So not being heavy in cash.
Yeah, I would just reduce the amount of cash you have. And then, like I said, I'm not an expert on stock market or real estate, but just if you look at what's going on, what's driving the stock market right now is, it has retracted, these past couple of days it's become more volatile. But in general, the average person, if they look and they see the stock market's at all-time high, they might inherently assume, oh, that means that our economy is doing well. Stock market's all-time high, right? Or they see real estate at all-time high. They say, oh, that means our economy is doing well. Real estate's all-time high. To me, it's the exact opposite, because the reason the stock market's all-time high, real estate is, pretty high too, is because the amount of money that we've printed has gone directly into that business class to prop it up.
Yeah.
So
People don't realize that. That's a great point.
keep that in mind. And I'm not saying there's not bad stocks out there. I have a little bit of a portfolio. I will admit I own gold and silver mining companies in my stocks,
Yeah, of course.
But I try, I'm trying to break away from what I believe in.
Mr. Gold, Ari Gold himself.
Yeah, sometimes. But I've heard, not to nerd out on it too much or geek out too much, but I've heard a lot of really smart people within the precious metals industry say, listen, if the 95% of the different stock options you have, or options you have within the stock market, if we go through a major crash or an economic downturn, a lot of those are going to lose value. We could get into the environment that the only stocks that continue to pay dividends or have strength through that are going to be the gold and silver miners. I don't think people should put a lot of money at all. And I don't think that your gold and silver paper contracts or mining contracts should be viewed at all like your physical gold and silver, which is my business. All we deal with is the physical coins, bars, rounds. We don't do the paper contracts, no futures, nothing like that. So I'm in the physical gold and silver business, which is where you should build your foundation. But outside of that, just be very cautious. If you understand what is giving these different markets strength right now, you'll realize that it is more instability than anything else. Okay. So yeah, get away from the US dollar. I'm not in the business, but I talk to people about storable food, storable water. Just get a little bit more on you don't have to go full crazy conspiracy theorist or whatever, but our food system, our water system is very vulnerable in the United States. Yeah. I don't know how to put it in kind of like a catchy way, but I don't know, maybe think about, okay, if we're going to go on the Oregon Trail back in the day. Yeah. Just kind of get ready to batten down the hatches.
I was playing the Oregon Trail video game on the computer in the back of the classroom when 9/11 happened.
No kidding.
Yeah. I remember that distinctly. I'd finished my test first or something, and so the teacher let me go in the back, and I was playing Oregon Trail, and I remember they walked into the classroom, and I was sitting back there and whipped around and listening to them tell me that 9/11 just happened.
It's funny that we have polarizing events that everyone kind of remembers what they were doing.
Yeah.
Oregon Trail was an amazing video game.
Yeah.
That
Except
took a lot of time
the random, like, oh, your kid got whatever the
dysentery.
Yeah, dysentery. You're set back 6 months or whatever it was. Got bit by a rattlesnake.
You can learn some lessons from that game. It was frustrating at times. But what I was referring to is the actual Oregon Trail. Take on that pioneer mindset. Even though we live in the technotronic,
you're resilient.
Take on that pioneer mindset. And the other thing that I was going to say as far as people just investing money in general is, I'll think of it.
Yeah, you're fine. I've always had a weird mindset or like view on things. Like ever since I was a kid, at times I'll be laying in bed at night and I'll actually like picture myself like where I'm laying like on the earth itself, like in relation to like water or high points or like what my environment is around me. I've always thought that way. Even like, where is your home positioned? And if things were weird, like, are you in a positioned place where you would actually want your house to be? Because you start thinking back before it was like, well, do you want to live in Scottsdale, Chandler, Cave Creek, wherever it is? It was like, okay, you're on the Oregon Trail, you're going into a new place to settle. And how are you going to pick where you're going to put your house? Well, I'm going to be strategic about where I place it instead of today. It's just, do I like the floor plan? Do I like this? And like, maybe you pay attention a little bit to that, but not to the extent that you would have before. And I've weirdly always thought that way. I have one last question for you as far in this line of thinking, and then I want to wrap it up with one more that's kind of a high level question to you. You hear everyone for years now talk about our country's debt. Okay. There's an old expression that says, if you owe the bank $1 million, the bank owns you. If you owe the bank $100 million, you own the bank. Like, they got to get you to pay it back. So they got to work with you in somehow, because if they don't get their $100 million back from you, they're going to be in trouble on their balance sheet.
Right.
Yeah, we got a lot of debt. But what does that really mean? Who's going to enforce it? What is it like? I'm just speaking speculatively.
It's a great question.
Think about it. Like,
that's a great question.
Who the hell's gonna come knocking? Who's gonna be the enforcer that comes to collect? What does that even look like? Because I mean, we're already there. We're already having those talks right now. The World War III has been looming for the last 4 or 5 months. All these talks of what's going, especially right now with the stuff with Russia and this drone thing. All this stuff right now that's crazy has nothing to do with debt. We're already there. So what does the paper matter?
So that's an incredible question. That is really good to ask. So to my knowledge, the amount of debt we have outstanding to foreign countries right now is I think around 8 trillion.
Okay.
So it's like maybe a quarter of our total national debt. So, that's something good for people to know is majority of our debt isn't held by other countries.
Just to ourselves.
Yeah, basically it's IOUs that
So 22 trillion of our 30 trillion is to ourselves. So what does that even mean again?
I mean, it's a exchange of bonds and fiat currency between the Treasury and the Federal Reserve. That's how it works, is an exchange of bonds
like
and
monopoly
fiat currency.
money.
But to answer your question more directly, it's so up until 1971, the United States was on a gold standard. So that means foreign countries holding our, currency could exchange it, holding our interest could exchange it for physical gold. Nixon, so that made everything so for the most part, a level playing field because they know what an ounce of gold is. It's uniform. Ounce of gold in America has the same properties as an ounce of gold in Europe. The uniformness of it. When we went away from the gold standard, then it became a fiat currency. So the value of the US dollar is basically just based on the confidence in the US government, the confidence in the US dollar. So as we're playing this global game, if we decide we're just going to delete the amount of zeros off our debt, then that would, in my opinion, it wouldn't work internationally because then it would destroy the entire confidence of the dollar. I mean, it's already going away. That's why we have the BRICS nations emerging. Yeah. So as far as it's a psychological maintenance of what is the dollar actually worth.
So it's like a perception, basically. Game.
Yeah, a confidence game, kind of a, it's technically it has been, the petrodollar, it was something that they used to kind of enforce the US dollar. And that's a whole thing that we might not have enough time to get into right now. They've had mechanisms since we went away from gold to establish ourselves as the world reserve currency. The United States military industrial complex is one of them. The force that they can display if they have to.
I think even in that sense too, the reason why we're able to maintain that strength is because we're the top consuming country. So if we, place tariff or stop consuming from you, it's going to hurt you. So we have that leverage. And then we're supposed to be the big bully on the block too, that if the United States is going to come after you, then you should be it's like, yeah, we got this debt and it feels like we have, somebody out there, someone that's going to come collect it. Doesn't seem to even really exist. But even in itself, it's like, it's so hypocritical because then on the other side of it, we still kind of control everything because of being the consumer or being the big badass military person. And so it's like, who are we afraid of? But yet that's what you always hear about. And that's what you're always, it's such a strange concept that I think a lot of people admit it. I don't fully understand it, that you kind of just like, yeah, okay, whatever you guys say. It just doesn't even make any damn sense.
A big light bulb for me is when I found gold and silver and understand how it has been the base of economic activity throughout the world. And everything, whether it be before the 70s in the United States, the paper dollar was a derivative of physical gold. When we went to the fiat currency after the 70s, it was a derivative of the derivative of gold.
Okay.
So if you look at a currency or any sort of a trade system, you can always trace it back to that being the foundation for the most part. And that's why I love gold and silver. That's why I think it really is becoming trendy and it's starting to make sense to people, is because it is truth. It is real money. It's God's money. Yes, I believe that. But even if you're not a faithful person, objectively, it is legitimately the best physical thing we could use for money. On a scientific side, the element, like the whole side of it, there's so many things we could, talk about why it is the choice. But that's one of the biggest things I love about it is its simplicity. It kind of cuts through this intentionally convoluted, manipulated monetary system we have now. It's kind of, like I say, the real money is the kryptonite to the fake
I see why
money.
you're drawn to it. It makes sense. Last question. You kind of already answered this. So when I talked to you about the impact I already see you're having and why it's important to you, I was going to ask you how you define legacy and what that means to you.
I just hope that my great-grandkids can read about me and say, dang, he did something cool.
Yeah, I get it.
I mean, not to keep it basic.
That's fine.
But what drives me on the inside is honoring my parents and my grandparents. They were my 4 grandparents and then my 2 parents, incredible people, displayed integrity and grace and heart. And internally what makes me tick is I owe it to them, so that's where I really draw from.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I seriously owe it to them, and that's how I view it. I talk to my father, every day.
When you say, you mean from like an honor perspective, you just want to
exactly,
honor? Yeah.
The amount of effort they put into me, I am a result.
It's not
of
that they're holding it over like you owe me.
Oh, no,
it's just
not
honor.
at all.
Yeah,
Not at
it's
all.
truly honor.
And when I talk to my father about it, when I talk to my father about it, he says, "No, I don't view it like that."
I love that.
But that's me.
That's cool. If you could have a billboard, says anything you want on it, but it's got to sign your name to it, and it's right by your location in Scottsdale and Shea. What does it say on it? Anything you want.
Close to our office location?
You can put it, I just pick a highly populated area that matters to proximity to where you are. If you want it to be right here at the 101 in Scottsdale Road, which is probably the highest volume traffic, or 202 in the 101 or something, wherever you want to stick it, just somewhere that a lot of people are going to see it and your name signed at the bottom so they know it's something that you put on there. It can be whatever you want, but what would it be?
We need to get the idea around that gold is money.
It just says gold is money. Layton McWilliams. I'm not mad at it.
Or technocracy now.
Okay. That's a unique one. I love asking that question.
That's a good question.
I get all kinds of different answers there. So
I'll have to admit, man, I feel kind of bad that I don't know if I really helped you guys listeners out too much with gold and silver. Like we had a great conversation,
yes,
but I feel like I was kind of short
at
you on the gold side.
You did not short us at all.
Okay.
And if anybody feels that way, I'll take full responsibility there, because once you just started talking about your faith and how it's the root and the base of everything that you're doing, it's just so important. I mean, it's what matters more than anything else that we could talk about. So yeah, we went pretty heavy into that, but that doesn't mean I can't have you back again. Because I know right now we could talk for another 5 hours and go into vertices of all this stuff, and we won't do that. So I'm going to have you back and we can go more into that side of things.
That sounds perfect, man. I got the important conversation out the way. So now we can talk about how we can fix what we're facing.
Exactly. I love it. Thank you for doing this with me. I really appreciate it. Thank you for doing what you do. I appreciate it, man. Just my experience with you firsthand. I was not anxious or anything about going into it, but I was skeptical. Like I just didn't know what I was going to be dealing with, because I'm just so, like, if I go buy a car, what you typically deal with, or and I just didn't know, like, what I didn't, if you don't, like, that's what creates anxiety in people, is the fear of the unknown. Like if you go into a scenario, you already know what to expect, you're usually not that anxious about it. But if you can't control it and you don't know what to expect, that creates that nerve feeling. And so because I was pretty oblivious to how the process worked, and what I should or shouldn't be doing, what was wise or stupid, and the way you handle it with me, it gave me confidence in you. It gave me confidence in the decisions I was making. And I can just see, like what you said earlier, the information and the conversations you're having with your clients and the other people you're interacting with, you're helping people. And I really appreciate you.
I like to think so, man. No, I add my perspective, and if they take something away from it, that's amazing.
Thank you guys for watching this episode. We are going to be wrapping up the Push-Ups for Poverty campaign here pretty soon. Right now it's almost Christmas. This will be coming out right after Christmas, and we're going to keep it going through probably just around the first of the year. That's actually the family that we were talking about at the beginning of this episode. We're doing a campaign right now. For every $10 raised, I got to do a push-up. So right now we're a little bit over $4,000.
Run it up, guys.
Every penny goes to feeding these children. Somebody has actually already donated the food, but it's $20,000 just to ship it in the shipping container.
Wow.
So I'm thankful that we've raised $4,000, but we still got a ways to go. So anybody that God pulls on your heart, or you just want to do a good deed, or just for tax purposes at the end of the year that you want to write off, it's a good way to do it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next episode.